Hopefulness 2.0, September 1st, 2023, and it's not turning the right way. There we go. Plugged in because battery was in the 20s. I don't know how long this update's going to be. Hopefully it's going to be short. Hair on the cable. I've currently got a small vinegar solution in this humidifier running. Ran it yesterday. It's running at just max power so that it can try to dissolve at least a little bit of the scale that's in there. Again, just water in here. Back still hurts. I was in the process of trying to finish, really start a job application for Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And in the process of it, I'm putting down all the various, what are the words I'm looking for? Tasks that are associated with what I was doing. Responsibilities, I guess you could say. It smells weird in here. Like maybe I dropped food on the floor somewhere and it's hiding. Or it's in the pipes. I don't know. I don't know. I've been slowly, I do have soil, so that might have something to do with it. I don't know. But I gotta recirculate all my plants tomorrow because it's Friday. But I was filling it out, and as I was filling out the various tasks, duties, and responsibilities, those are the words I think I was looking for. I was about to get to the termination section, and I was like, what? How would I word my termination? And then I realized maybe it's not a good idea to work for a car rental company after having just been fired for basically driving. And on top of it, me being the person who says, hey, we need fewer cars on the road, to then be a car rental person. Yeah, I've got self-awareness, but sometimes I don't realize, I don't, my self-awareness does not branch out as far as it should. But, it was in the middle of the process, and it was only like the first piece of, I may have put in like 15 fields, because every fucking job application has like 8,000 goddamn fields in them for each job. And if they want me to put a cover letter on it, I will totally give them a cover letter. I have the same cover letter for everybody. I don't remember exactly. Hold on, let me see. I think it's saved on my desktop. Not there. There it is. I'd rather eat a whole bus tire than write a cover letter for a job. I'd rather eat a whole bus tire than write a cover letter for a job. That's what it says. And it's in big fucking font, too. And that is my cover letter. I will not change it. If they want a cover letter, I'll put that up there. I don't care if I don't get a job. Because, I took that from a tweet that had been screen capped and has been shared around essentially as a meme at this point. And the reason why is because, within that specific tweet, I think they put that in there. I think it may have been Tumblr, I don't know. But it was like, yes, let me show you my work sona instead of, fursona, which is usually what that word. But, it's a portmanteau of work persona. And it's like, let me show you my work sona that, really does care about X, Y, and Z versions of your job. No. We shouldn't need to do this shit any fucking more. I get it when maybe there is, when they can be choosy, but we shouldn't let them be choosy anymore. We shouldn't let employers get to be choosy. Um, like, people say, hate the player, not the game, but, or don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, the people who are playing the game are also part of the game, and so we should be hating on them. And the people who are writing the rules of the game and who are enforcing the rules of the game, if we hate the game, we should hate everything about the game. Not just the game as some sort of ephemeral concept that can't be directly attacked. It's like, look, I get it. I've got to work because that's the way our society currently functions, and we don't have proper social nets for when you do lose your job. Like, why is it that here in America right now, we don't have unemployment insurance for when you get fired for good reasons? Like, you still got fired, you still don't have a job, so you still don't have income. Why don't we have it set up to where even those people who are at fault and thus got fired still don't need to worry about paying rent and paying for food and shit? Yeah, we've got some programs, but that's what unemployment should be, is to avoid the necessity of those programs. We shouldn't need food stamps to be, like, as part of, it's like, or rather as, what am I trying to get a point across? Okay, like, so I go to the unemployment, fucking mustache hair, I think. So I go to the unemployment and I start filing for that. And I already have a problem because I have a case that's been open since fucking March of 2020 when the pandemic started. Like, that's been over. Why is this still a thing? It's 3 fucking years later and I haven't gotten paid in 2 years anyway. So, like, what's the point in all that shit? For one. So that in of itself is already an issue. But it's all like, if you have made enough or whatever, here are some other, like, but here are some other programs. And it's like, why is the unemployment office basically sending me off to housing and food programs? Should not unemployment provide enough for those things? Like, that's what it should be for, I would think. If I don't make enough money through unemployment, then those can be supplemental, because that's what SNAP stands for. Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. That's what food stamps is. If I'm not making enough when I'm getting unemployment, then I should be directed to the SNAP program. Everybody should get unemployment. But this is where people are going to, and this falls into, effectively, universal basic income. People are going to make all kinds of excuses for not doing a thing. You know what? Let's just do it anyway and see what happens. Raise minimum wage. Well, if we raise minimum wage, prices will go up. You know what? Prices have already gone up. Let's do it anyway and see what happens. Oh, well, if people get universal basic income, they won't keep working. Let's do it anyway. Let's just see. Let's do it and see. Well, if everybody gets universal basic income, then landlords will raise prices, and then it won't even really matter. Well, you know what? Prices are going up anyway. Let's just go ahead and do it anyway. Let's see. Let's do it and see what happens. Because saying, well, if we do this, this might happen. Well, how can we tell if we don't fucking do it? Stop trying to predict the goddamn future and just help people. And the one thing that I don't get is there are people who may in fact benefit from those things who are against them for some fucked up reason. It's like, you could literally be getting maybe an extra, I don't know, $1,000 a month. Let's just say, just straight up as universal basic income. And there will be people who would get it, who would get pissed that people are getting it. And it's like, why? you're getting it too. Who cares? If every person in America just got an extra $1,000 a month, it doesn't matter. Like, okay, maybe if you're making, I don't know, 10 times that per month or more, maybe you shouldn't get it. Okay, that's fair. And then people will be like, well, what about so-and-so, such and such, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a fuck? Maybe they can file for it at that point. But instead of trying to make it the other way where you have to fight for the bare minimum, let's give the bare minimum and make people who have too much fight for it. Instead of the other way around. You know, being poor, being unemployed, or being homeless all have stresses on them that when you have to fight for those other things, it makes it harder to be alive. You know, being homeless especially, I've done it. And you are spending all of your day trying not to be exhausted, just going to the public assistance office is a job in of itself. You know, there are people who talk about, well, when you're unemployed and you're looking for a job, that's your job now. Yeah, in a lot of ways it is. Whether you want to spend 8 hours a day on it or not, it often very much is like a job. You know, some people will say, oh, you know, they're trying to say that you have to come with this idea that it's your job now and that you have to spend 8 hours a day just perpetually looking for jobs for 8 fucking hours. Let me ask you this. How many jobs out there are making you work throughout the entire 8 hours? Minus, you know, the various shift stuff. And I'm not talking about where you might have a load of things that you need to do. I mean you are going to be working. You don't have a choice in the matter. You will be working for the entire 8 hours minus your 2 breaks and lunch. Because in my last job and the previous job that were at the same company, that wasn't generally the case. There was a lot of waiting around. Like, you might send out an email and now you're waiting for an email to come back. Now, sure, that's still part of your job. But you're not writing an email for that whole time either. You write an email for 10, 20, maybe 30 minutes, depending on how long the email has to be and what content needs to be in it. But I mean, most of the emails that I received, they were formulaic for one. You know, somebody would probably copy, paste, and delete a couple of things and changed up names and times and whatnot, and that's about it. You know, okay, I gotta look up this place and, you know, and this is somebody else who's sending this information to me. Maybe they have to look up the address and print out, you know, a map for me so that, just in case, like, my phone dies or something and I don't have, you know, navigation purposes. I don't have navigation content. So at least have, you know, directions to get there in case, you know, whatever. You gotta have the old school stuff just in case. That takes 5 minutes tops. And you might be thinking, well, what about all the other things that person's doing? Well, yeah, but they are not constantly working for that time frame. What's interesting, though, is often lower paid jobs are making you work that entire time. So what happens is you have a lower paying job that's making you spend the majority of your time at work doing work, whereas there are a lot of other jobs, higher paying jobs especially, that have a lot of work associated with them, but there's a lot of time for you to do other stuff. You know, most of the people that I play EverQuest with are playing at work right now. They are at work playing, or they're at work at home playing, and maybe they got a phone call in like half an hour or something. They have a schedule that they can work around. They have tasks that they can work around. They can do other things that they want to do while they're making money, effectively doing nothing, waiting for the next task to either rear its head or for them to work on. And I mean, there's a dude who, I don't want to get like too into details, and I'm sure he hasn't even gotten into details, but he works in cybersecurity for the government, for the federal government. He's making six figures, at least. And he lives in the DC area. And it's like, okay. And his wife makes like $80,000 a year. So she doesn't make six figures, but she's making high fives. And they can both mostly work at home. And so they can play EverQuest all fucking day with each other while making bank. And like, what is somebody who's working at fucking Taco Bell doing? You know, when they probably have a micromanaging manager on their ass that's watching the damn cameras to make sure they're not leaning over for too long. You know, the difference between those two people is so vast that the people in making that amount of money don't realize how much fucking money they really do have. You know, yeah, DC is a high cost of living area. But what life are you paying for when you're making that kind of money and thinking rent is high? What kind of living situation are you in? You're not in a one bedroom or a two bedroom apartment, most likely. Because I can guarantee you, I could go on the internet right now and look at a two bedroom apartment and probably find many two bedroom apartments in the DC area for less than $3,000 a month. And even so, even if it was less than $4,000 a month, that's only $48,000. Mom's making almost twice that. Dad's making way more than that. And, you know, like, as far as I'm aware, based on the information that they've provided, Dad is making at least $100,000 a year more than Mom. So they have at least $100,000 just floating. You know, they got kids. Okay, cool. Even if you got two or three kids doesn't cost $100,000 a year. Like, I don't know what, like, if I was getting that kind of money, if I was making $150,000 a year, for one, I could live here without any problem. And if most of my job could be done at home, it wouldn't be a problem. I could do fucking anything I wanted for the most part. Obviously, I would have to, you know, designate time frames in which I needed to be certain places so that I could ensure that I did my job right. But I would have the choice in doing so too. And that is a huge deal. Most people do not have a choice in where they can work. And it's just absurd. Like, I know people who are literally rich in one capacity or another, and they don't think they are. Probably because nobody who has any decent amount of money thinks they're rich because of one thing or another. You know, some people are going to be like, oh, well, what about taxes? Okay, cool. Taxes are great. Taxes help pay for stuff that we need stuff paid for. You know, not everybody can make $100,000 fucking dollars a year. Because we have a system that says, fuck you, pay me. Instead of us doing the other way around. Which, the reason why I even went on to this diatribe in the first place is that's what my cover letter basically is. It's fuck you, pay me. I'll do the work. Fuck you, pay me. To quote Childish Gambino. Probably other people, but you know. And, you know, to show my privilege with the time that I have, I will speak of a thing that I still wanted to speak of anyway. And I'm sure if anybody actually watched this, nobody really does, but if anybody were to watch it, they'd be like, hey, you're a hypocrite. But I'm going to say it anyway. So within the last couple of days, I have learned about a new video game called Sea of Stars. I learned about it through Jesse Cox and his 5-minute gaming news. And I was like, this seems interesting. It looked good. The way that he described it, which I'm sure he described based on, some marketing that had been passed along in some way or another, and he just kind of, he and his writing team probably said, hey, let's rephrase this for the 5-minute news. It's a Chrono Trigger-like game in the way that it plays and the like, and, there's some similarities when it comes to combat and all kinds of stuff, but, it has its own individual aspects. One thing about it, though, is that they've actually managed to get Yasunori Mitsuda, the composer for Chrono Trigger, and I believe Chrono Cross. I've never played Chrono Cross. I tried playing it on an emulator. I just couldn't get into it. So I'm like, well, how much is this game? I look it up, and they've got a demo. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to download this demo. It's only like 350 megabytes or something like that. It's not big. All right, cool. I played the demo yesterday morning, and holy shit, it's so good. I'm like, all right. And so I'm hyping this thing up. I'm talking to the people in Discord and on the guild about it. And the more that I talk about it, the more I want to play it again. So I've already finished it. It took me like an hour to play it. And I mean, the combat style, very similar to Chrono Trigger. There are mechanics that are different, obviously, because, they got to be able to stand out. But, you can't just steal. You can't just, you can't claim, be the only one who has the Chrono Trigger style of combat. You can claim a lot of other aspects to it. And they've incorporated more mechanics into it, which are great, that work in the overworld but don't necessarily work in the combat world. And it's not even really the overworld, because you have, when it comes to like Chrono Trigger type places or type games, you have three main sort of background or set pieces, if you want to call them that. You have the overworld, which is travel only. You will do nothing but travel. In like Final Fantasy, for instance, the overworld will also bring you into combat. For the most part, in Chrono Trigger, there is no combat directly from the overworld. The overworld is specifically to get from point A to point B. They're doing that in Sea of Stars. They have a point A to point B type overworld situation. Everything is sort of, you're tiny and the world is all grand, but it's at the same time, it's almost like it's a tilt shift type thing and whatnot. It's really cool. And the graphics and system are obviously better because it's newer. And if anybody worth their salt is making a Chrono Trigger-esque video game, they're gonna look at Chrono Trigger and they're gonna improve upon it. They're not gonna just take the basics and go from there. Animations are a lot smoother. Chrono Trigger, you look back on it and it's like watching, and like the timing and everything on it just is old. I mean, the game is an SNES game. It's not even a PlayStation game. And so you've got the overworld, and then you have the exploratory / combat world where most things happen. I said there was 3, right? I don't know what the third one would be then, because usually exploratory / combat is all the same. Because compare and contrast. In Final Fantasy, even if you were in the non-overworld exploratory section, so let's say you're in a city, but this city has hostile enemies in it, you don't see the enemies. They're usually random encounters. On occasion, you'll be able to see an enemy, and Or you'll see an NPC, talk to them, and they'll fight you. But the vast majority of fights are going to be random encounters that you do not see where the enemies are, and you don't know what you're going to be fighting when you get into that fight. And so you'll have the overworld, you'll have, your sort of city / exploratory dungeon-esque overlay world, and then you'll have the fight scene world. Well, in Chrono Trigger and Sea of Stars, the exploratory area is generally also the fighting area too. And what will happen is you'll see the enemies. You can sometimes avoid them if you maneuver right, because they'll usually have some sort of pathing that's going on. Or you can approach them, and sometimes you can even kind of get a first strike hit on them. And in this game, that permits it so that there's an additional function that comes in a little later into the intro of the game, where it can actually make you a little bit more on the powerful side, but it doesn't happen automatically. And the more you hit an opponent, the more... So you hit them and they drop like 5 little orbs, and you collect them during any turn. There's only a total of 15 orbs, and they all like coalesce into one individual orb each, so there's 3 possible. And then you can absorb those onto a character, but you don't absorb all 3 at once. You absorb them one at a time, so you can build if you want, or you can just say, hey, I'm going to do this on this guy just to improve them a little bit, whereas maybe I'll wait for another turn for somebody else to be able to use it for some reason. Which is a cool mechanic. Like, I had never seen that before. I like it a lot. And so you can boost like attack power, you can boost, magic powers and heals and stuff that way. But you're still fighting in the exploratory arena, as it were. It's just that it's been color shifted and brightness, and like the background has been dimmed so you can just see the enemies more, and all kinds of stuff like that. I guess the third one would be the fight only sections that aren't you. but you're still kind of on the exploratory plane. So I don't know. I don't think there really is a third one at that point. Because then you have like I said, you have Final Fantasy, where you have I'm thinking Final Fantasy VI when I'm thinking about this, because it's the first Final Fantasy I played. You have the overworld, which can have random encounters. Depending, but most of the time, yeah. There's very rare... I can't recall at the moment. There may be points in some games where on the overworld you can be, without having accessories or something else that allows it, where you can be running around in the overworld in certain sections and there aren't any encounters. And then there is the sort of city / dungeon exploratory section where you've effectively zoomed in. And often those will also have random encounters, but they'll sometimes not have them as well. And then from either one of those locations, you'll then go into the fight scene, the fight location. And that is the third set piece, if you will. Whereas Chrono Trigger and Sea of Stars pretty much only has 2 set pieces for the most part. But yeah, the gameplay is great, the music is great, like the characters are... It's funny, like the 2 main characters are kind of meh. It's everybody else so far that's better, which I'm kind of okay with. Like, it's taken me a while to get to this point of being okay with it, but like, in a way, it's kind of good that the 2 main characters are somewhat blank slates, but they're not, and I would say the reason why is like it's common practice, especially in the 90s in general when it came to RPGs, and especially JRPGs. You had the silent protagonist where they didn't have a personality. They didn't say anything. There's aspects of Super Mario RPG. Mario was totally silent in Super Mario RPG. He never said a fucking thing. he only used body language. He would mostly jump, but he would, sometimes slump or jump or spin around or whatever it was. But he would never say anything. He didn't have a voice. He was voiceless. He was a silent protagonist. And so you can put yourself onto Mario easier that way. In this game, you have two main characters. Having either one of them as like the leader doesn't really matter. It doesn't change much. And they're kind of non-personalities. They are, in many ways, movable set pieces. And at first it took me a while, and I didn't really realize that I would be okay with it, because with the silent protagonist and whatnot, you insert yourself into that person's position. And so that's what we're doing in this case. They're just not silent. They still they don't really have much for personalities, though. But it's not bad. It's kind of a good thing now that I'm thinking about it. But yeah, I spent like 6 hours playing it yesterday after I bought it. And I really shouldn't have bought it. But I just couldn't stop fucking thinking about it. And I'm like, I got this fucking pink ass controller, which I don't even show yet. But I bought a new controller because the last one was starting to disconnect inside the system itself. And I mean, it had been around a while anyway, so. But yeah, got me a new pink wireless Xbox controller because then it'll be easy to see amongst all the sea of blues and blacks that I have in my life. Blue and black. Blue on black. Anyway, so I spent 6 hours on it yesterday. And what's funny is about 6 hours into the game is about where the demo ends as well. But some of the characters in it are great. There's one that's like basically just walking meta humor. Like at one point she even says like, how about the one merchant who's living in a wood shack that sells 25,000 gold piece daggers or something like that. Like, it's that meta. It's that kind of meta. And it's fucking great, and I love it. The combat is super smooth. It's fun. Going back to the Super Mario RPG thing, it's, I think I'm going to call this Sea of Cover Letters. Just because it's stupid. And that's what I thought of right now. But going back to the Super Mario RPG components, like, it's similar as well, because like Super Mario RPG is like a combination in a way, because you have the overworld which you're moving in on, which, as far as I can remember, it's really limited on the scope of how you can. It's not even so much on rails. It's literally just like you're going from point A to point B type thing, and it appears as if you're traveling or something like that. I don't remember. It's been so long. Whereas Chrono Trigger and Sea of Stars, it's still on rails for the most part. Like Sea of Stars, as far as I can tell, is very on rails, whereas Chrono Trigger was less on rails on the overworld, where you could kind of explore a little bit here and there, because there were places where they weren't obvious places that you could go to unless you explored a touch. Whereas here, it seems like everything is, at least so far, it's still in the early stage of the game. I don't know how long this game is. It could be 20, 25 hours, something like that. They don't want it to be a super long game either, because they don't want you to grind. Which is great, because as an older person, and I think this is the thing, I think they are of a similar enough the developers are a similar enough generation as myself, that are like, man, we ain't got time to fucking grind. We're gonna let you play through the story. Now, what they've done, though, is made it to where you can have relics that you can buy from the shops that will make the game easier if you want, which is kind of cool. Like, there's timed hits. That's where I was going with the Super Mario RPG thing, but they have that overworld. It's very much not exploratory. Then you have the exploratory dungeon cityscape format. And then, because it's similar, more so than Final Fantasy Tactics, it goes into a fight screen. But that fight screen is closer in resemblance, but not the same, as Chrono Trigger. but it's functionally it's equivalent to Final Fantasy, in that it's like everybody has a turn, blah blah, and it's all turn based and all that kind of crap. But yeah, Sea of Stars is great. They don't want you to grind. You can buy all these kinds of like relics and stuff. Like one of them gives you time, like makes timed hits easier, or like just happens kind of thing. There's an ability that because the main character has a girl and as a male and a female character, and the female character has an ability that if you time it when like you launch out this like boomerang, but it's a moonerang. It's like a crescent moon, because she is born under the moon and he's born under the sun. And so she's more moon based and he's more sun based type attacks, and like she only has attacks so far. He at least has a heal and then like a one attack, which is basically you just grow a tiny little sun and shoot it at him, and it's fucking great. It looks awesome. And I have yet to try it out, and I will try to do so when the next time I get on to play it. But there is a relic that you can use that will just do timed hits for you. I don't know how that would work with hers though, because hers cancels out if you don't time it on her, because she'll send it out, it'll bounce off of her, and then it'll go to another NPC, and then it'll come back and it'll bounce off of her, and it'll go to another NPC, and it'll do that once it gets through all of them, and then does a round robin on it. So if there was a time where I had like 8 dudes on me. It was crazy. Phrasing. They're these like little worm guys, like sandworms, that are really hard to fucking kill. And what they'll sometimes do is they'll slightly burrow into the ground and they'll summon a friend. And sometimes that friend is like 1 or 2. And it got to the point where I had like 8 of those little worms completely surrounding me. And I'm like, well, fuck, let's try this. I never really got it to work the way that I wanted to in those fights. But there is an achievement to get 25 bounces. And I did pull that off. I was like, when I first saw it, I was like, there's an achievement for this. I know there's a fucking achievement for this. And then when I finally bought and played the game, I got the achievement in like maybe 30 minutes tops. Because, I had to go through because like, obviously, it's like once you do it so many times, boom, things are dead. And if you don't get enough, then it's whatever. So I didn't get it on the first try. And I had already been trying in the demo, so I got an idea of how it plays out. It is easier for the most part, at least for me, if there's one target and they're of like a mid-range distance. If they're too far away, I actually it's worse for me, especially in the earlier stages of it, because it gets faster and faster and faster and faster after each bounce. If they're too close, then it kind of fucks me up, but it's closer towards like the middle of the timing, where like 5 or 10 or 15 more. And I got it after finding someone in a mid-range, and it was just one target. It was pretty cool. Yeah, that was nice to be able to see that. But no, I mean, it's the first time I've bought a game in a long time, like full price, basically, because it's on sale for like 10%. But it's brand new. It just came out. That's the first time I've done that in a long time. And I really like the fucking game. It's good. It's fun. It's adorable. It's like one of the main characters. He's just so fucking likable, and I'm like, they are gonna kill this dude off, because that's how much I like him, and that's how likable he is. They're gonna fuck this dude up, and they kind of did, sort of in a way, and maybe that's how they did it, and like maybe that they were like, okay, we're not gonna fuck him up in the end. We fucked him up in the beginning, but this is how he, like, personality-wise, he's always been like this. He's like super cheerful and he's super friendly, and he's like exactly how you want to be in life, I would say. Like, he's the kind of guy, he will walk into a room and make friends with everyone for the first time. He's never met them, and he will walk right up to them and just start having fun with them. I met a dude like that just the other day. I think it was Monday? Yeah, it was Monday. It was my last real shift. Because there was one client that I had to take from a nearby house. I had to take him to Kaiser in Pasadena, and he needed to get, I think it was an X-ray, or he needed to get some kind of scan. I don't remember. If I do remember, I'm not going to say, because that just minimizes the amount of information I'm passing off. Although I'm not under HIPAA, but HIPAA can still fuck me up. So, you know, because I was under HIPAA when I was getting that info. So he had to get a scan of some kind, and then that took a while before he could get the scan, and then we had to wait a little bit because, like, if the scan had happened really quickly, I could have just like dropped him back off at that one house and then come and pick him back up later. But we stayed at Kaiser for a while, and then we had to go get some stuff to like basically snack on, because like it's gonna be a while. And then we went back into Kaiser, and he had to get meds. Well, he also had to get another scan or test or something, but then he had to get meds both times. Like, he had to get meds the first time after the scan, and then he had to get meds the second time after the second test or scan or whatever it was. And the second time we went to the pharmacy, we were standing in the drop-off line, and there was an older dude who was chilling, sitting there, and like the way that he had asked this question was as if he had known the dude I was hanging with like for years, like he was a professor at a teacher or something like that, or like a family friend or something like that. Just the way that he had questioned it, with the tone and the question itself, and blah 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 blah. It made it sound like he knew him. And when I got done, I was like, How do you know the old man? He's like, I don't know. He just kind of asked me about because I was wearing a USC shirt or whatever it was. And I was like, what the shit? And like, that's that guy that I'm talking about when it comes to this game. That's the guy who makes friends with everybody. And he made friends with me. I sat there and started talking with him and everything. And, you know, I was able to bounce a lot of shit off of him and have fun. And that was the thing. It was like, at one point, I inserted myself into the conversation at one point, because he was just constantly throwing out jokes, and it reminded me of a bit that had happened in an episode of Rick and Morty, when Morty was trying to throw out a bunch of jokes, but he was like flopping it, and it was while they were in a medical waiting room, and Rick was like, "What are you working on your Type 5 for the comedy club or whatever like that?" And so that's kind of what I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said something akin to those. So it got him thinking and talking, and I ended up sitting down because the buddy I was with had to wait in the longer pickup line, and so the older gentleman was there, and so we're just bullshitting back and forth, and it was great. And that's the guy I want to be. And this character, Garl, Garl, he's very much like that. He will make friends with everybody. He's the insistent nice guy. Like, he'll meet you, learn that you have something valuable to do, appreciate it, but also want you to be a part of the team, kind of thing. He's like, "Hey, I really like, I'm liking what you're doing. Let's do this thing. I want to help you. You help me. Blah blah blah. Let's just pat each other on the back without worrying about anything else. Because in the games, you don't have to worry about it. Nobody has jobs. There's like merchants and shit and whatnot, but like, it's not based on like most video games I've ever played. These people don't have the jobs to pay for their lives. They do this because they want to. That's what it seems like. Obviously, it looks more like they have a specific job title. But think about that too. If you didn't have to work to live, you could live to work if you wanted to. You know, going back to the old man that I was talking to, you know, he's talking about not unemployment, but and it's funny because I had mentioned to him that I was more productive when I was unemployed, and I've been more productive this week than I usually am when it comes to, you know, filling out stuff and looking for jobs and finding housing, all that kind of crap. Because I don't have to worry about going to work. I don't have to worry about the train coming on time, or, you know, watching the train drive by 2 minutes prior to me getting to the location or something like that. I don't have any of these things in my head right now. They're non-issues. Of course, I've still got to deal with the kind of stuff. I can't just forget about it. But like, if my rent even if I was only getting $1,700 a month, that would pay for my rent and my phone, and I would have not much left over. I could make it work though. If I just knew that $1,700 a month was coming to me no matter what, I could make it work. I would stress a little bit, but I wouldn't need to stress as much. And sucks that I lost the job because, I don't have the opportunity. I still don't have it, but I don't have the opportunity to now get that good insurance that they had. But insurance doesn't pay the bills either. Benefits don't pay the bills. As my mom said a couple of times in the past, Cracker Jacks don't pay the bills. I'm just kind of rephrasing it as all. And to have to make people work hard, spend so much of their time, so much of their day, just trying to ensure that they aren't going to be homeless, that they aren't going to go hungry, feels cruel. And it feels like there's a lot of people out there who are not like Garl, who really should be. Be more like Garl. Have fun.